Will we start? Oh, he's right here. Very good. Chairman's here. I was going to say, he'll be right here momentarily. I understand. Not a problem.
Good to see everyone. We ready? So, Javier Becerra, Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, joined by our Vice Chairman of the caucus, Joe Crowley of New York. We just concluded our first meeting, Democratic Caucus meeting, since we've returned now to session. It's kind of odd. We've been gone for almost 2 months, and now we're hearing that House Republican leadership is already discussing the possibility of having us leave in 2 weeks and be gone. So this is clearly a House and Congress that is not interested in coming to Washington, D.C. to get some things done. Otherwise, we would have by now tackled the emergency that we see growing with regard to the Zika virus. There are some 17,000 American citizens who either have contracted or may be infected by the Zika virus. Among those, we know that there are probably some 1,500 women who may have contracted the Zika virus, and certainly we know of cases where there are pregnant women who have contracted the Zika virus. We know that if it's not fatal, the virus could lead to severe consequences, millions of dollars of healthcare costs, and a child who may never live to be a normal human being. And so we hope that this September we actually try to get some work done, and that our House Republican colleagues will see that we can actually try to leave the impression with the American people that we understand that before we take another break, we have work to do. Not least of which, beyond Zika, is the issue of getting a budget in place. Here we are again. We are just weeks away from adjourning for the 2-year session without a budget. And now we understand that there is a fight among Republicans in the House on how to move forward on another budget. Republicans are intent on breaking the budget agreement that was reached just last December. We have a template in place that tells us how we should move forward with this year's budget, but Republicans have chosen to, at least some Republicans have chosen to break that accord already before it's had a chance to go into place. We also understand that House Republican leadership may decide to use time not to deal with the Zika virus, not to deal with the Flint, Michigan poisoned water lead in the water crisis, but to deal with sanctioning House members who fought to get a vote on the floor of the House to prevent gun violence. And because House Republican leaders would not allow there to be a vote on sensible gun measures that most Americans, 90% of Americans, agree on, and because we demanded action and many of us took to the floor of the House, and Republican leadership decided instead to recess the House, now we're hearing that the House Republican leaders may push to sanction members who were simply trying to get the House to do its job, to get things done. Put on top of that the fact that we have not yet had a vote, a single vote. We're less than 2 or 3 weeks from adjourning, and we haven't had a single vote to try to deal with the gun violence just a couple of months removed from the largest mass killing that took place in Orlando, Florida. We can get some work done. Our caucus meeting lasted a little longer than usual because members were interested in talking about a number of very important issues that could come up. We're hoping they will, but we're not sure because it looks like this House is spending more time doing politics than it is real policy. We hope to get some work done. Certainly, we hope our Republican colleagues will recognize the emergency that is the Zika virus, and we hope that they recognize that you don't run the largest economy in the world like a 2-bit operation off Main Street in some alley when it comes to its budget. It's time to get our work done, and I hope that our Republican colleagues are prepared to get some of that work done this September. With that, let me yield to the Vice Chairman, Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. Democrats stand ready to work on behalf of the American people. We have all this year as well as last year, and we stand ready. We're waiting on our Republican colleagues who continue to drag their feet, if you can even say drag their feet. I mean, they're basically standing still on the issues facing the American people. Whether it is the issue of Zika, as we've seen the spread since we left the House of Representatives, more and more people are now infected with the Zika virus. We know more women, more pregnant women, are infected by it. We know that women in parts of Florida live every day in fear and of dread of the noise of a mosquito going by their ear, and in fear that they may themselves be infected. We know the consequence that it has and the peril it has for newborns. And yet our Republican colleagues continue to drag their heels. We also know that since we left for the August break, 4,500 people have lost their lives to gun violence. So as the chairman said, as the Republicans apparently have had time to investigate the sit-in on the floor of the House of Representatives, they've had the time to meet to discuss what sanctions ought to be brought against members of Congress who participated, as I did. I acknowledge, for the record, I participated in the sit-in. Bringing a judgment against me or my colleagues, we stand together, united on this. The people that are being punished are the American people, that every day goes by. So they have time to go through all these proceedings and to bring a resolution to the floor this week, but don't have the time to investigate gun violence in the United States. Don't have a time for a commission or a task force to be created to investigate, is mind-boggling to the American people. This is what is so troubling to the American people, that they see that the Congress is willing to take these petty political jabs and not address the issues at hand. The people of Flint, Michigan wait for their Congress to act to help the children of Flint, Michigan have a modicum of hope that their lives will be normal. We see the suffering throughout our country of people with the opioid abuse that's taking place, people who are addicted. These aren't just abstract people. They are American citizens in Democrat and Republican districts waiting for, and their families, their parents, waiting for their Congress to act. This is the consequence of what happens when Republicans have internal bickering. We know that. They can't even come to an agreement on a budget. And now we're facing once again the potential for another government shutdown because Republicans in the House of Representatives cannot get their acts together. This is the consequence of what happens when the right hand doesn't know what the righter hand is doing. And who pays the price but the American people? This needs to end. We need to give the American people assurance that their Congress knows how to govern. And so far, Republican Congress has continued to demonstrate that they don't know how to govern.
Questions? In May, when the Senate was considering its $1.1 billion bill, the Blanchard bill, which didn't have Planned Parenthood language in it, there was a lot of opposition from Democratic leaders. You wanted the 1.9 billion, said the 1.1 was not big enough. I think you said that. I know Leader Pelosi said that. Now that the 1.1 seems to be the vehicle that's going to move, are you still opposed to that number, or would you take it as a step in the right direction?
So we know what the experts who are combating the Zika virus say we need to do. The so-called generals of healthcare who have told us this is what they need. They told us what they needed when it was Ebola. They're telling us now what they need with regard to Zika. And the president put forward the request of those healthcare generals on what they needed. That would take about $1.9 billion in resources to tackle the Zika virus. Just to put that in perspective, if a child is born infected with Zika, we're told that the lifetime costs of providing that child, if the child survives, with health care is somewhere around $10 million. So if 200 children in America contract the Zika virus because of inaction by Congress, that will essentially be the same amount of money that it would have taken to tackle the Zika virus in the first place to prevent those 200 kids from ever becoming infected. That's the penny wise, pound foolish approach that the House of Representatives under Republican leaders are taking. Now we have the Senate that passed a bill that provides $1.1 billion in funding, short of what CDC and NIH tell us they will need. I'm not interested in doing emergency health care treatment on the cheap. At the same time, there are women who need to know that we're doing all we can to make sure if they're pregnant that they won't become infected by the Zika virus. This is a really tough place to put Americans in. As the vice chairman said, the Republicans aren't punishing Democrats, they're punishing the American people every time they do this political stunt in Washington, D.C. by not passing meaningful and sensible legislation. Will members, Democrats and Republicans, support a $1.1 billion request? I certainly think Democrats are ready to do what's responsible. The difficulty here is with that $1.1 billion request, Mike, that while it passed in the Senate with some Senate Republican support, House Republicans continue to reject that and say that they will not do it. And so that question is more appropriately posed to the majority party in the House that controls the House and can determine what passes. I believe Democrats have from the very beginning said we are ready to pass a responsible bill that tries to tackle this issue. That was before so many Americans became infected, before some 17,000 American citizens may have become infected by Zika. And so we're ready to do the responsible thing. The majority party, which is supposed to govern here in the House, the Republican members, should be prepared to do what's responsible as well.
I would only add to it, I never cease to be astonished by the level of expertise that exists in the House of Representatives and the Senate Republican Party when it comes to addressing issues of science. They're experts on global warming. They know exactly why this is happening. They're experts on women's health. Majority of the people in both the Senate and the House are males, but they're all experts on women's health. And they're all apparently experts on how much money it will take to address the issue of the Zika virus here in the United States and quite frankly around the world. They're experts on it. They know that it's not $1.9 billion. They know it's somewhere around $1.1 billion that they need. That's the kind of experts we have in the Republican House of Representatives and the Republican Senate. In fact, I would question whether or not Republicans in the House believe we need even $1.1 billion. It's time for us to listen to the experts. They have no axe to grind except to eradicate the potential risk for American citizens facing the Zika virus. I don't have the wherewithal to understand exactly what that cost is. Scientists, the people in the medical profession, those are the people we're listening to, and they are telling us that to take money from Ebola to put into an account to address Zika is further exposing the American people to risk on the Ebola front. Taking money from cancer research and shifting that money to help fight the Zika problem in Florida is putting further at risk cancer research. That's not what the American people want us to do. They want us to find a solution to the Zika virus. And what I say is, listen to the experts.
So to clarify, if a $1.1 billion clean bill came to the floor, would you oppose it in order to get leverage to get the higher figure? Or what would happen? You personally?
I think we're prepared to get something done. We understand what it takes to get it done because the experts have told us. It's hard to speculate where we would be on a bill which Republicans in the House have said they won't even allow to come up. And so, this game that Republicans play of always descending to the lowest common denominator, of scratching the bottom of the barrel. I don't think most Americans, when it comes to the health of their families and their potential newborns, want us to be scratching the bottom of the barrel when it comes to what we do when it comes to health. So we have to hear our Republican colleagues say they're ready to do something responsible.
And I just say, Mike, I'm not prepared to negotiate against myself, nor is the chairman, nor we as Democrats. Republicans in the House, they control what comes to the floor. And as he said so far, they haven't brought anything to the floor. The ball is in their court. Let's see what they come up with.
Any other questions? We're going to continue to do what we've done, demand a vote for sensible gun safety measures. We'll do whatever it takes. In the minority in the House of Representatives, you have very little leverage to try to get sensible measures on the floor for votes. So we're going to do whatever we can to try to put forward the will of the people who want us to pass sensible gun measures. And so not sure what we can do, but we're going to find whatever avenue possible to try to finally get a vote on sensible gun safety measures. And we're not going to be cowed by someone who says that they're going to try to slap us on the wrist or punish us for trying to do the work of the American people. I think we feel we're in the right to get the people's house to do the people's business. And so we're going to push however we think possible to get a vote on sensible gun safety measures.
As the chairman said earlier, we're going from potentially 3 weeks to 2 weeks. And you have to understand legislative weeks. We're not talking every day. We're certainly not talking weekends. We're not talking most of Mondays for the most part, and not talking most of Fridays for the most part. So a very limited amount of time to address the issues the American people desperately want us to address. But we have time, apparently this Friday, to bring up a resolution condemning those of us, including John Lewis, a man who has given his entire life to civil rights, to freedom of expression, who has recognized this as one of the most important civil rights of our time, the right to not be killed by a gun, that they will attack him, that they will censure him, that they will in some way go after John Lewis. And what I would suggest, by going after any of us, you're going after John Lewis. And if John Lewis is going to be attacked in terms of the focus of this, I'm John Lewis. Javier Becerra is John Lewis. We are all John Lewis, regardless of what happens. And that's something the Republicans need to understand. And we'll wait and see what the resolution says.
We're doing a kind of a report card story on the federal support for the flooding aftermath around Baton Rouge. Do either of you have any impressions on how the government did this time compared to, let's say, Katrina?
Certainly, we want to make sure we hear from our colleagues from Louisiana. My understanding is that from some of the reports that we've gotten that FEMA was there when needed, as needed. They have provided the resources that are allowed by law. And my understanding is that the governor and some of those who are representative of the areas that were impacted have thanked FEMA for the work they've done. I don't think it's completed yet, and certainly there's a lot to do. But my understanding is that FEMA did its job, is doing its job, and hopefully will continue to do its job, and hopefully will have the resources it needs to do its job the right way. That's what people expect, and we will fight to make sure that FEMA does its job.
I would add to that, and I believe that FEMA is doing everything it possibly can. I think the federal government is, as do I believe the state of Louisiana is doing as well for its constituents. But that doesn't take the sting or the pain out of being homeless or having seen your home be destroyed. And many of these homes were destroyed outside the floodplain, very similar to what happened in Sandy up in New York, something we in New York were desperately dealing with as well and continue to deal with. The notion or idea that global warming may be happening faster than people had speculated and really understood. But this is the ever-changing nature of nature itself and how we as a government will deal with that. But I want to say this, and I think it's important to say, as a New Yorker, as someone who struggled during the Sandy issue here in the House of Representatives, when there was not tremendous support from many parts of the country for what we were dealing with in New York and the tri-state area, I want to say that I, as a New Yorker, and I believe I speak for all of my New York colleagues, certainly on the Democratic side of the aisle, that I will support any measure that is deemed necessary to help the people of Louisiana work through this crisis as well. We New Yorkers understand what this is about. We know it's not about Democrats or Republicans or the nature of a district. It's about helping American citizens get through these tough times. And we New Yorkers are ready to stand by our friends and our fellow countrymen and women in Louisiana.
You mentioned a lot of things were talked about in the caucus meeting. Was the relationship relationship with the Mexican president discussed after Trump's visit? And I'd like you to react to pretty credible reports coming out that the person who put the meeting together, Secretary Luis Videgaray, will be resigning today.
Wow. That was not one of the subjects that we discussed in caucus. I will only say that I've never seen a campaign like this, and I've never seen a candidate running for president like this, and by God, I hope we never see a campaign or candidate like this again. These issues are way too serious to treat this way, and I think there's been a Trump effect here in Congress as well, where we don't talk about the substance, we don't talk about how we're going to solve things, and we see the results. Government shutdowns, Zika virus, which is infecting thousands of Americans. Flint, Michigan, we allow Americans to drink poisoned water. Wow, I don't know what more to say other than we did not discuss the Mexican president and Donald Trump's visit and what's going to happen to any Mexican cabinet minister. We're worried right now about getting American women who are pregnant the services they need so they don't contract the Zika virus. We're willing, as the vice chairman said, to have a bill come on the floor that deals with the crisis of those who lost their homes in Louisiana as a result of the flooding. We're ready to stand up for the Americans who found their homes go up in flames because of the wildfires throughout the western states. We're ready to get our work done. And of course, we're ready to vote for a real budget so that Americans don't have to worry about their government shutting down at the worst moments for them, whether it's in Louisiana or in the western states with the wildfires or whatever it might be. I think we know we have to stand up. We get elected and we get paid by the taxpayers to do our work. So not sure what's going to happen to the Mexican cabinet minister. Right now, I'm more concerned about what's happening in America.
Do you have a sense that the working relationship between the Democratic caucus and the Mexican government, which is a day-to-day thing that does affect Americans, was that damaged by last week's events?
I think those of us in elected office who have working relationships with the Mexican government continue to have those. Donald Trump's antics didn't change that one bit. We will continue to have a very strong relationship with a neighbor and friend to our south. And for someone like me whose ancestry, heritage comes from Mexico, I continue to have a great relationship. And I still believe I'm qualified to have this position, even though Donald Trump seems to think that because of my heritage, maybe someone like me wouldn't. But I think we're ready to do our work, and I don't think anything Donald Trump has said or done will impact the ability of decent-minded elected officials in this country from continuing a very strong and important relationship with the people and government of Mexico. Joe? Yeah.
If Republicans don't bring a clean Zika bill to the floor, would you push to have it attached to the CR, or what other options for pressuring Republicans are you looking at?
So as the vice chairman said, we're not going to negotiate with ourselves. These are all questions that rightfully should be asked of the majority party, the party that has the power to govern and to determine what gets done in the House of Representatives. We'd love to have that, and we hope by November the 8th, the American people see that it's time to get in place people who want to actually govern and get things done. But that's a question that really has to be asked to Republicans. They know what needs to be done with regard to Zika. They can do it halfway. I was going to use another word, but halfway, or they can do it not at all. And they can continue to allow American women who are pregnant to become infected with Zika. And as I said, if 200 children are born with the Zika virus, that could total the cost by itself of just 200 kids being infected with Zika that it would take to actually prevent Americans from ever becoming infected with Zika all around for the 320 million Americans. So what the Republicans in the House do, we're not sure, but they sure are not spending time talking about how they're going to tackle this crisis with Zika that's hitting so many parts of this country. So
All I would add to that is that I believe, and I think we all believe in the House Democratic leadership, the Republicans cannot pass a bill on their own. They can't. If they could, they would have done that already. They can't do it. So they're going to need our support for something. And in that, as Javier said, as repeating what I said, we will not negotiate against ourselves. And I will just say one brief thing about the issue of Mexico and the United States and Mr. Trump. No matter what damage Mr. Trump does to himself, and he continues to self-inflict damage upon himself every day, con man Don, whatever he does, cannot come between the respect and admiration that the people of the United States have for the people of Mexico and vice versa. The people of Mexico know that this is not the American people. Their angst is against one person and one person only, Mr. Trump, and what he stands for. And it will not do anything, I believe, to interrupt the affection that we have for both Mexicans and Mexicans for the United States citizens.
Questions?
When it comes to the budget overall, some Republicans suggested yesterday the possibility of a minibus or two appropriation bills might be passed this month. Was that discussed today, or did Democrats have a stance on that?
So here we are, 11 months, 1 week into the new round of negotiations on a budget whose outline was established 10 months ago in December of 2015. And Republicans are still trying to come up with air balloons on what to do on the budget. That's the difficulty we have with 2, maybe at most 3 weeks before House Republicans decide to adjourn. They're trying to figure out how to pass a budget that they should have had a whole year to work on. They can put up trial balloons. We want to pass budgets, and they are the majority. They could pass a budget without our support that should be signed by the president. But they clearly are having internal fights among themselves, so that Republican civil war, which I think is reflected in the candidate they chose for president, is once again rearing its ugly head here in Congress and showing the American people that Republicans just are more worried about their internal feuding than actually governing. And so I can't give you an answer to what Republicans want to do or will try to do. I certainly don't think that Democrats are going to engage in that same game of air balloons. We're ready to pass a legitimate budget based on the outlines that were agreed to by Republicans and Democrats back in December 2015. Yeah. Last question.
The White House urged Congress to tack on a TSCA funding boost in a stopgap. This is a law that did boast almost uniquely bipartisan support. Was that discussed this morning? Do you think there is support for a boost for that legislation, or for that law, to kind of kickstart the program?
Yeah, that was not a subject that was discussed, and I know that over the course of the next week or two, as hopefully we come to an agreement on a budget that will get the outlines of it. Most of us on the Democratic side would say a budget, very important document that you must put into law, should not be a place where you put things that have no significance to our fiscal integrity, so that you don't start filling this bill up with items that could not pass on their own simply because you know that this is a bill that must become law. And so I think on the Democratic side, and working with the administration, I think all of us recognize that there are some proposals that are bipartisan, if they are done the right way, and could be included in any bill that is going to reach the president's desk for his signature. One of those bills would be the budget. So we'll see where we go on that. But as I said, we have no idea where Republicans will go yet on the budget. So to talk about things that might be included with the budget is way beyond, I think, the scope of Republicans' abilities right now. Thanks all very much.